About 5 years ago, the Reverend Carol Cook, who assists here at St. Clare's, preached an unforgettable sermon, which at a gathering called the Bash. The Bash was something that we did for a number of years as this part of the dean of the 6 churches of our deanery, and we would go to Shadow Cliffs to frolic and to have fun and to worship God outdoors and to eat together. It's great. And she began the sermon based on the New Testament text. And she reached into this bag and she pulled out this green hard hat that was decorated with feathers and gizmos and Sunday school memorabilia for the past 30 years. And she put it on top of her head. And she said, "Friends, this is the helmet of salvation." And I believe she followed up with something along the lines of saying, "If you're laughing, it is because you want one of these yourself." Carol wanted us to believe and to know that while we found her helmet of salvation a bit odd, it was in fact a part of the armor of God and was great at warding off the fiery darts of the devil. She was willing to stand there to preach in front of all these Episcopalians as well as all of creation, because we were outdoors and there were all kinds of people there to convince us that this was so. It makes me want to ask the question, what does it take for a person to be able to know and believe? It comes directly from our gospel text, Peter's response to Jesus. We know, we believe. It's a critical question. Here we have Jesus once again talking about bread, and just like many of you who are tired of hearing about this passage, so too were those who were following him. The passage makes clear that Jesus' talk about eating his flesh and drinking his blood was a bridge too far. And the passage says so because, as it says, because of this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer went about with him. We might look at this as well as the Old Testament passage and believe that these texts are about choice. Joshua says to the Israelites, "Choose you this day whom you will serve." And Jesus himself says to his disciples, "Do you also want to go away?" We can make a lot of hay over what it means to choose, but I think we fall short of the deeper lesson. You see, what's behind Carol's wearing of the helmet of salvation, what's behind Jesus' long speech about the bread of life is simply this: God's life. This is more than just me proclaiming to you what you already know. This is about affirming deep truths. You see, all this confusing talk from Jesus is God's language of love. It's tricky and it can trip you up. And to understand the language of love, you need to be in love. Otherwise, you don't get it. Why? Poetry is the language of love. Poetry is the language of love. I know that when I fell in love with my wife, I would read to her poetry. She probably would bore to tears. Can't you just be direct? But no, I would be reading from Shakespeare, and I'd be reading all sorts of things. Why? Because it wasn't enough just to say the direct words, "I love you." It didn't convey the deeper truth, the deeper reality. Poetry is the language of love because it has the capacity to tell the truth and to hold mystery together. Truth, says Mark Oakley in his excellent book, The Splash of Words, says, it is too far important to be literalistic. We know this when we fall in love, we try to express how we feel. Literalism won't do. The curse of literalism is that often it misses the meaning and turns resonant truth into stone. It stops the flight of the moth of sacred poetry, pins it down so that it no longer dances near the divine flame, but becomes just another bit of controlled, routine argument like so much else. Now I know that poetry is not necessarily your cup of tea. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, but Vital Life sure is. And that's where the good news really is good. A woman by the name of Jean Baker Miller, she's written lots and lots of different books. Her work, What Do We Mean by Relationship, gives us the signs of knowing that you're in love or you're in a good relationship. Hear me out. Let me know if this makes sense to you. She says there are 5 things to look for that you know you're in a good relationship. The first is zest. Now, I'm not talking about rhymes here. I'm talking about vitality and aliveness. You know you're in a good relationship when you have zest. You're in a good relationship. Good relationships are also characterized by power and effectiveness. In a good relationship, you feel empowered to act immediately in the relationship. It's relational power. You share it with another person. It's not power over the other person. It's power with that person. You feel power. A sense of worth also flows from a good relationship. You know that you're valued because the person knows you and loves you. Number 4, knowledge is another aspect in that people in good relationships explore and discover more about how they feel and what they think. I remember the early days with my wife, and when we were dating and courting, we used to go on these long drives just to talk. We'd go for hours on end. Number 5, in a good relationship, there is a desire for even more connection. In reflecting on those 5 points, it's no wonder to me that Peter and Jesus, it's no wonder that Peter answers Jesus with a question of his own. Lord, where are we going to go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and know that you are the Holy One of God. They were alive when they were with Jesus. He may have said some things that kind of freaked them out. but they were alive when they were with him. They were alive in his midst. Coming back to those tripping up words, I know what he's talking about. I've experienced it here at St. Clare's. Every now and then, when I offer a class, sometimes I offer some readings that are really kind of difficult, that are spiritually mature readings. And sometimes I get pushback on that. I have had more than once had people say to me, Father Ron, can you give us just some straight scriptures? I can't tell you how much I disagree with this stuff. It's boring. And in response, I say to them, just stay with me. You will get it eventually. And about halfway through the class, I can see the change happening. Someone eventually says, you know what? This stuff is real. One person who came to class was an atheist. And in the middle of the course, they pulled me aside and said, Father Ron, I have got to quit this class. And I said, why? They said, because I'm beginning to believe. And that's just the point. You're beginning to believe and know Some of us think that faith is the end point. Have a strong faith. Just endure and hold on, and that's it. However, in the way in which I've described it, faith is just the beginning point. We hold on to get to a place of understanding, to a place of knowing that there's some deep truth in this. And after a while, that no is no longer primary. If our life is aligned with love, if the bread is true and nourishing, if the blood flows in us, then we see the signs of being in relationship with God. We experience zest and power, a sense of worth and knowledge, a desire for more. We come not only to believe, but to know. Somebody would say, well, why don't you point God out to me? You ever had that happen? A woman who came and knocked on the door and said, could you come to the sanctuary, please? She was afraid to do this, so she had me do it. And her grandchild said, where's God? Show me God. What would you do? It's a process. Friends, it's not immediate and it's not direct. You may have a great experience, but you're going to spend the rest of your life unpackaging that. We come not only to believe, but to know, and we stay because life, eternal life, flows through us.